All right, welcome to crunch time. It's almost time for the AP exam. Let's start talking about evolution. This unit should hopefully be pretty easy because this is where we tie together everything we've learned, and it should be pretty simple for you, just some new vocab words to get down. So let's go ahead and get started on chapter 22. So evolution, we've heard about the theory of natural selection, survival of the fittest. What is it talking about? And this is where we have to go back to our unit on mitosis and meiosis. And we've got to remember that where does variation ultimately start? It ultimately starts with a mutation. A mutation occurs. And now that mutation can either be good, bad, or have absolutely no effect. What this chapter is all about is those mutations that are good, that are beneficial, that help them survive. And how it helps them survive is either it makes them more appealing to females, or it helps them stay away from predators, evade them, or it helps them survive the environment they live in. And so these variations, the people with these variations are able to reproduce their offspring. And because these variations are caused by mutations which are in their DNA, they can pass those mutations, those variations on. And this is going to lead to an important word for us, and that's biological fitness. Fitness is not like going to the gym and running a 3-minute mile. To be biologically fit, what that means is you had a child, you had offspring, and that offspring survived. And that offspring went on to have offspring on its own. So the day that you become grandparents, you can say you are biologically fit. So natural selection is all about biological fitness. What offspring survived so that they could have offspring? And whatever this mutation variation that you had to begin with is passed on and on and on. So remember, one of the big things you want to get down is there's a difference between a theory and a law. This is the theory of evolution, and we're using the word theory by the scientific definition of the word theory, not the common person's definition of the word theory. So remember, for us, a theory scientifically is going to explain the how or the why. This is a theory of natural selection because it explains why change is occurring. So evolution is more of a law because it's the what. What is evolution by definition? Change over time. That's it. Change over time equals evolution. Why does it occur? That's the theory of natural selection. That's it. In scientific terms, that's the difference between a law and a theory. So what we're going to be doing today, what we're going to be focusing on is the evidence. So I guess you could say your claim is that evolution occurs. Here's the evidence that backs it up. And the reasoning it can tie in, could be tying evolution and natural selection together. So let's go ahead and start talking about what supports evolution. Oh, hold on. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn the sound off. Give me a second. Okay, I can't figure out how to turn the sound off while I'm doing this, so you're stuck with the sound effects. Okay. So these are the 4 main types of evidence that we're going to be talking about today. So this was back in 2004. This magazine that used to come out, kind of a big deal, and as I said, clickbaiting before it was cool. So evolution, all the evidence we have supports it. We have yet to have any evidence coming forth that disproves it. So scientifically, evolution is a fact. So let's talk about the first piece of evidence, and that's the fossil record. And the fossil record is showing us this change in the physical attributes of species over time. Now, we can use this to piece together a tree of how things have changed over time. Now, there's been a lot of debate of, well, what about a missing link? What you missed a spot here. Maybe there's something right here that you haven't found the fossil for yet. But that hasn't been the case. Now, yes, there are some holes, but you've got to think this is where science has to play with politics. A lot of fossils we found are not in the United States. There is a huge amount of fossil record in the Middle East. And hopefully we don't get along too well with them. So they don't just let us go in there and start digging up fossils. So that has, for political things, has done a lot of, has set us back of not being able to find missing pieces. But there have been a lot of, for a lot of things, we have found the timeline, the progression, the change over time of species. So, for example, horses. 60 million years ago, they were tiny. And then something happened, if you look here, about 20 million years ago, where they just started changing. So this is where we can go look at not just the fossil record, but start looking at the climate. What was the Earth like? What was the geography like? Could that explain why they evolved? Because again, it's all about if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You're only going to change if you need to. So by looking at the geography, what we saw was about 60 million years ago, we've got our little horses. Then about 20 to 25 million years ago, what happened is the geography of North America changed. And biome-wise, we started becoming a grassland. All these grasslands started popping up in North America. And having hooves was actually an advantage because they could grip onto the grass better, which means they could run away from the predators better. So if you could run away, you could survive to have kids, survive to live another day. So just the change of the environment led to the evolution, because horses, used to have toes, but now they have hooves. And why? What's the theory behind that? And that's geographical change. We got grass, they needed to survive in it better. A random mutation occurred, and it worked, and they ran with it. Another one is we found this, I guess you could call it missing links. This guy here, I'm not even going to try and attempt to say his name, but that's what he looked like. And it's kind of like the missing link between dinosaurs and birds. We had the theory that birds, modern day birds, evolved from dinosaurs. And this was the fossil proof to show that missing link. So you can actually see the wings in the fossil record. So there's kind of what we believe that, I'm still not going to try and say its name, looked like. So, again, we used to do this activity. Unfortunately, we didn't have time this year, where we showed what actually occurred is mammals evolved from, well, how did we come up on land? There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. When did we go up on land? And we have these fossils here, and then going to a land mammal, but where are these transition fossils that show this step? And it took some politics, but we found them all. And what actually happened was creatures went on Earth, then they went back into the water, and then they came back out onto the Earth. And that's how modern day mammals evolved. What was the key one? Where is he? Oh, he's not in there. A key one showing of us going up on the land is the Tiktaalik. And we finally found the fossils to show that missing link. And that wasn't until 2006. So just kind of like when Mendeleev created the periodic table and he said, hey, there's missing elements here. Don't worry, you'll find them one day. We have this timeline of fossils that we know eventually we'll find them. It's just, yay, politics. Sometimes we have to wait. So again, Tiktaalik, kind of a big deal. You can actually, go on Amazon. Probably not anymore. This is from 2014. Now it's probably a big collector's item. Yep, there we go. Sold out. All right. So the fossil record, that is proof that animals have changed over time. Well, plants, animals. Another thing we can look at is similarities in our anatomy that can show that, yes, we had a common ancestor. You just look at the color coding here of the different skeletal bones and how they match up. So there's everybody's wrist bones. Oh, sorry. And you've got the arm bones, the finger bones. It's very similar. We call them homologous structures. So again, similar structure, similar development. They could have completely different functions. That's okay. But it shows that in the past, we've had a very close relationship. Could even say a recent. Now, by recent, we're talking probably 20 to 50 million years ago. But considering the Earth is, a couple billion years old, that was just, the other day. And again, you just don't see homologous structures in animals. We see them in plants too, whether they have leaves or needles. There's succulent leaves, spiny leaves, tendrils, flower or colored leaves, I'm sorry. Fun fact, the flower of the poinsettia, oh, that was a horrible color. Let's try this. Oh, that wasn't much better. Are those little yellow guys in the middle? That's the flower. These red ones, these are all the leaves. They just have a different type of chlorophyll. Again, these are all homologous structures. So, here's a vocab word we want to clarify, and that's convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is basically finding a similar solution to a common problem. So, whether it's the dragonfly, the bird, or the bat, one thing they all have in common is wings and the ability to fly. And it was just, again, a similar solution to similar problems. How can I get away from the predators? How can I have a better way of getting my prey? Oh, I will fly. But there is no common recent ancestor. It's just coincidental mutation that solved the same problem. So we don't call these homologous structures because there is no common ancestor, no common recent ancestor. We call these analogous structures because, again, it's a similar solution to a similar problem. So analogous structures are examples of convergent evolution. Again, another example of analogous structures is the ability to swim. So while fish are vertebrates, yes, dolphins are mammals, and again, it's convergent evolution. They have some analogous structures, but they are not closely related. Just similar solutions to the similar problem. Now, there's parallel evolution, which is another type of convergent evolution. Again, similar solutions to similar problems, but not really having a common ancestor. So what we see in Australia is that we have parallel evolution, which is a type of convergent evolution where a mutation occurred and we all just kind of ran in the same direction, even though it was really kind of coincidence. I mean, we're not totally closely related because long ago, remember, this used to be one continent, Pangaea, and then plate tectonics, it split apart. So at that time, we had common ancestors, and then millions and millions and millions of years later, gave them time to do parallel evolution, but coincidental. Again, not closely related. Australia is unique, and they have a lot of the marsupials, the pouch mommies, where North America, we have the live birth. We give birth when they're ready. We don't give birth early and then they go hang out in a pouch. We've got the placental mammals. So I just think this is kind of cool how we can see this parallel evolution between North America and Australia. Well, I should say Australia and the rest of the world, not North America. But again, these are all marsupials. These guys are all closely related, but they're not closely related to the placental mammals evolutionarily. Just coincidentally, a lot of the same solutions, similar solutions to the same problems. All right. Okay, number 3 in proof. So let's see let me go back to my slide, my notes up here. Again, we're talking about the evidence of evolution. We've talked about the fossil record, the anatomical record, and then we started getting into the structures. And okay, we're still on anatomy, how we're similar anatomically. So vestigial organs, these are things that we have now that don't serve a purpose, but they did a long time ago, and we started to kind of get rid of them, kind of think of like our appendix, even though now we're kind of finding out more that it actually does do things. But there are examples of vestigial organs that we used to use them, but we don't anymore, so they just kind of hang out. And the reason why they're still there is because there was no incentive to lose them. Doesn't help to have them. It doesn't hurt to have them. So what is the incentive to get rid of them if it doesn't hurt? So again, it's not a disuse. We lost them just because we didn't need them anymore, and there was no push to get rid of them. Let me pull up this video and see if the sound works.
Your body is also a museum of natural history. Look closely and you'll see parts that aren't there because you made them, but because your animal ancestors did. No longer serving their previous function, but not costly enough to have disappeared. These remnants of our deep history only make sense within the framework of evolution by natural selection. With your arm on a flat surface, push your thumb against your pinky and tip your hand slightly up. If you see a raised band in the middle of your wrist, you've got a vestigial muscle in your forearm. That tendon you see connects to the palmaris longus, a muscle that around 10 to 15% of people are missing on one or both of their arms. It doesn't make them any weaker though. There's no difference in grip strength. In fact, it's one of the first tendons that surgeons will take out so that they can use it in reconstructive and cosmetic surgeries. You can find the palmaris longus across mammal species, but it's most developed among those that use their forelimbs to move around. In primates, that means the muscle is longer in lemurs and monkeys and shorter in chimps, gorillas, and other apes that don't do a lot of scrambling through trees. It's not the only leftover muscle that we've got. Look at the 3 that are attached to our outer ear. We can't get much movement out of these muscles, especially compared to some of our mammal relatives, who use them to locate the sources of sounds. Presumably, this would have been quite helpful for early nocturnal mammals. In humans, you can still detect the remnants of this adaptation with electrodes. In one study, researchers recorded a spike of activity in the ear muscle cells in response to a sudden sound. Not enough to move the ear, but detectable. And you can probably guess the location of the sound based on these results. It came from a speaker placed to the left of the study subjects. So this is their left ear subconsciously trying and failing to pivot toward the sound. You can see another futile effort by our vestigial body parts when you get goosebumps. When we're cold, tiny muscles attached to our body hairs contract, pulling the hair upright, which causes the surrounding skin to form a bump. For our furry mammal relatives, the raised hair increases the amount of space for insulation, helping them stay warm. Birds can do this too. You've probably seen a puffy pigeon on a cold day. Adrenaline is one of the hormones involved in the body's response to cold temperatures, and it's also part of the fight or flight response. So it helps some animals appear larger when they're threatened. And it may be why surprising and emotional turns in music can give some people goosebumps. And then there's our tail. At the end of our spine are a set of fused vertebrae. Some people have 3, some people have 5. We call it the tailbone. It now serves as an anchor for some pelvic muscles, but it's also what's left of our ancestors' tails. Every one of us actually had a tail at one point when the basic body plan is being laid out at around 4 weeks of gestation. Human embryos closely resemble embryos of other vertebrates, and that includes a tail with 10 to 12 developing vertebrae. In many other animals, it continues to develop into a proper tail, but in humans and other apes, the cells in the tail are programmed to die a few weeks after they appear. Very rarely, though, a mutation allows the ancestral blueprint to prevail, and a human baby will be born with a true vestigial tail. The most adorable vestigial behavior is the palmar grasp reflex, where infants up until they're about 6 months old have this incredible grasp on whatever you put in their hand. There's a similar reflex for their feet. I wanted to show you this great piece of footage from the 1930s where they demonstrated this behavior. These babies are only 1 month old, and you can see that their inner monkey can support their entire weight.
So, in case you just heard, my daughter just asked, are the babies born with a tail, do they die? No, they don't, and it's really rare. And you know what they do? They just cut the tail off. That's it. Easy peasy. They don't even feel it. Why do they cut the tail off? Because if you're born with a tail, people are probably going to make fun of you. So they cut it off so people don't make fun of you. Or put a hole in your clothes. Yeah, that'd be a lot of work. So again, vestigial organs, another proof of evolution. All right, so again, some examples of some vestigial organs that you talked about in the video. Again, whales have legs, but why would they have leg bones and pelvis bones if they were always sea creatures? Because remember what I had said earlier, mammals started on land, went into the sea, and then came back out again. So it's remnants from millions of years past when they were still land creatures. All right, another piece of evidence of evolution is looking at embryonic development. And as you can see from the pictures, I mean, here it's kind of obvious that we all look different. But these blue structures, these are all vertebrae, I believe, that we have in common. If you look at the embryos at the beginning and even kind of in the middle, well, some of them, even at the end, they look very similar. And it's not, I'm not going to lie, it's not one of the best pieces of evolution, but it is another piece of evolution. Not particularly my favorite, but it's out there, so we have to talk about it. All right, and then, yay, in the last 10, 20 years, we've started to go down to the DNA level because we all use ATCG, which we can transcribe into those, AUCGs of messenger RNA, which then we can translate into the 20 amino acids, which then put together to make your protein. All of this is the same regardless of what species you are. And we can look at certain genes, ones that are kind of important, stuff for cellular respiration, because we all need that ATP, and we got to get the oxygen to make that happen. So we can look at the genes for those two things, and we can look at just how similar or different they are in species. And what a shock, more closely related, less variation. So this slide here, this graph here, what you're wanting to see is, if we look at something, wait, what is the millions of years ago? Why is that there? Give me a second. Okay, now I know what's going on. Sorry, having a brain fart. So what this graph is showing us is when these species diverged. So, for example, human and kangaroo, our common ancestor lived 125 million years ago. A goat and a cow, their common ancestor lived 20-ish million years ago. That's what this graph is showing. We'll be able to figure that out by looking at DNA, RNA, protein, well, ultimately at the genetic level. So again, we go after these genes because they're kind of important and we know everybody has them. And they've been around for a long time. All right. So again, looking at amino acids instead of DNA is just, another way, because we know different amino acids, you could still get the same tertiary structure of the protein and it could still have the right shape, right function, but amino acids could be different. So what this shows again is if we look at the amino acids of hemoglobin and we compare it, hemoglobin of these species, and we compare it to humans, we see, hey, between the macaque, I think that's how you say it, and human, there's not that much difference. So if we draw a cladogram, they're going to be close together. Versus between a human and a dog is 32, and then you can see the numbers going up and up and up. So the bigger the difference, the farther away they are on the evolutionary tree, and then the farther apart they would be on the cladogram. So hopefully you can see that, the bigger the number, the bigger the distance between the two organisms. So we can use DNA to make these family trees, and it's based upon genetic evidence at the molecular level, getting right down to the DNA and seeing similarities and differences. And this right here is a cladogram of relationships. Again, all of these had the common ancestor of an early primate, and then a mutation occurred to give us lemurs. And oh yeah, one of those lemurs mutated that gave us this little, I don't know what that is, loris, I don't know how to pronounce it. And then another mutation occurred, and then we got the Tarsaliers, and then another mutation which led to the New World monkeys, to the Old World monkeys, and modern day apes and humans. So we can look at the genetic level and see that. And it was very similar to what Darwin did in his evolutionary tree or relationship tree or cladogram he did of the finches when he went to the Galapagos Islands. Just showing relationships. Now, this came out, as you can see, in 2008, and this is a more accurate tree based on DNA of, you can see how we started down here, single cell organisms, and over time how we evolved into mammals and more sophisticated, higher up on the evolutionary scale creatures. And when you go to college is when you get to learn about all of these different types, the plants, the fungi, the protostomes, the echinoderms, all of those guys. All right. Another proof of evolution is, well, what do we always want to do with some sort of scientific experiment? Can we recreate it? And that's artificial selection. That's human-driven evolution. Well, it's our fault. We force breed certain things to get new traits. We've seen, we took wolves and we turned them into modern-day dogs. We took the wild mustard plant and cross-pollinated to get these modern vegetables. So again, genetic modification. We started with this cabbage plant, and then we just selected for certain traits. And over time, we evolved those into these various plants, and they all have the exact same common ancestor, this wild cabbage. All right, so again, artificial selection is just us humans selecting for traits and breeding them to get those traits and to get them better. And here's our original corn. Here's what watermelon used to look like. Here's what a banana used to look like. There's your carrot. And then again, all those leafy vegetables we talked about. Okay, I hit pause and I forgot where I left off. So I think it was here. So again, all of these descendants from human intervention. So we can genetically modify something in the wild, well, I guess, by hand or in a test tube. And what we're doing is the exact same thing. We're combining traits to make something better. So here are some examples of things that we have genetically modified over time. Watermelons don't look like what they do today. Bananas, carrots don't. Here's your original corn, your eggplant, and those lovely greens we were talking about. And hold on, I have a little video for you. Let's see if the sound works.
It took a remarkable experiment in a most unlikely place to solve this mystery. The place was the middle of nowhere Siberia, and the experimenter was an out-of-favor Russian geneticist named Dmitry Belyayev. Local fox farmers had asked Belyayev for help in breeding a less vicious animal. Belyayev began with the tamest foxes he could find. From their offspring, and for many generations thereafter, chose only the tamest for breeding. He'd expected that each new generation would be a little less vicious, a little more tame. But by the 10th generation, he was seeing things he never expected. All of a sudden, his fox ears started down. His fox tail started up. They started to bark. This is not characteristic of foxes. They started to have different coats. All these little creatures that you can't imagine being in the wildlife. I mean, it's not a matter of selecting for them because they're not there to be selected for. There's variation over for them. What does tameness have to do with ears and barking and coat color? Belyayev and his colleagues immediately went looking for an explanation. They checked the fox's adrenaline levels. That's the hormone that controls the fight or flight response. And they found they were far lower than normal. That would explain the tameness. They're just not afraid because they're not producing as much adrenaline. But where does the multicolored coat come from? And somebody said right off the bat, hey, adrenaline's a biochemical pathway that also goes to melanin, also has something to do with the animal's coat color. So there's a correlation between coat color now and the adrenal gland. Suddenly, it all started to make sense. As Belyayev bred his foxes for tameness, over the generations, their bodies began producing different levels, a whole range of hormones. These hormones, in turn, set off a cascade of changes that somehow triggered a surprising degree of genetic variation. Just the simple act of selecting for tameness destabilized the genetic makeup of these animals in such a way that all sorts of stuff that you would never normally see in a wild population suddenly appeared. Most dog biologists now believe something very similar to what happened to these foxes also happened to a population of wolves more than 10,000 years ago. And the rest, as they say, is history. The world's first domestic animal. And from the beginning, dogs have been...
All right. If you couldn't hear that very well, don't worry, I'll put a link up to that. Oops, you don't need to see that, sorry. So, again, we can genetically modify crops, and we've been doing it for a while, and there's many ways we can do that. You don't need to memorize any of these. These are way above our pay grade, but what I want you to get out of this is genetically modified could happen one of many different ways. So, where else do we see natural selection? It's the whole predator-prey fight we constantly have going on, whether it's insecticides and insects, or it's antibiotics and bacteria. Something happens where there's a random mutation and that one survives. So that gene, that mutation it has, is selected for, and the rest are selected against. Since this is selected for, these ones, well, it survives, so it gets to pass on its offspring. Whether it's an insect or a bacteria, if it's got the right genetics, it's going to survive, and that's natural selection. There you go. So, again, everything we've learned, why, trying to explain the why. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? We've learned a bunch of what's up until this year. Why these all happened ties back right here to evolution. So when in doubt, put evolution on the test. No, just kidding. Use your brain. All right. So I believe that concludes it. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you came up with them. You wrote them down so you can bring them to class. Again, you wanted to know some of the vocabulary. We talked about some parallels and stuff like that. Oh, here we go. Sorry, not used to this one. Here. This is good enough. Again, what this chapter is all going about is all the different pieces of evidence that support evolution. So you want to make sure you understand, how does the fossil record support evolution? How does anatomical records support evolution? How does molecular records support evolution? And how does artificial selection support / demonstrate evolution? So again, artificial selection versus natural selection. It's all about who is pulling the strings. Artificial, it's really human. We're doing it on purpose, trying to create a new individual. If humans are destroying an ecosystem and an animal mutates to survive it, that is natural selection. We weren't trying to change that organism. It changed in response to the environment, to nature. So that's natural. So make sure you know the difference between natural and artificial selection. And that's it. Come up with your questions. We'll see you in class tomorrow.